This podcast is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Hey guys, before we get started, just a warning that there's a little swearing in this episode. Okay, here's the show. Recently, reporter Matthew Schneier met up with an up-and-coming actress we'll call Allison. It's not her real name, but it's what he called her in his story. Matthew writes for New York Magazine.
She's an actress. She works, film, television, these sort of things. And she has always been, or has generally been, fairly slim.
But Allison was about to start promoting a new project, and she wanted to lose a little weight. So in December, she went on a course of semaglutide. That's the generic name for diabetes drugs like Ozempic. And while they are intended for type 2 diabetes, off-label use has exploded, including, of course, in Hollywood. Matthew knew what Allison looked like. He'd seen her on screen. But when they met in person, he could tell something had changed.
The way I describe it in the piece is she looked to me like the kind of Instagram version of herself.
She wasn't skeletal. He wasn't concerned, but there was a difference.
Something looked a little bit kind of sharpened, and I wasn't surprised when I said I knew that she was on this drug, but I said, what's different? And she said, I'm down 10 pounds.
Matthew says they sat together drinking their coffees. He had a normal-sized one and a piece of bread. Allison had a tiny one and no bread. She said she just wasn't interested in food.
Several people I spoke to who have experience with these medications described feeling a real kind of disinterest, even bordering in disgust on food. They kind of had to force down their throats, essentially. One woman said to me, I loved Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts were my favorite thing. And I would be chewing them and thinking when is this going to be over?
Today on the show, the era of Ozempic may just be beginning. What does it mean when a drug can profoundly alter weight, health, and our relationship with food? I'm Lizzie O'Leary, and you're listening to What Next TBD, a show about technology, power, and how the future will be determined. Stick around. At the end of your first year, Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right. Everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from that trip where you sort of learned to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match. It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Other credit cards often charge annual fees for access to perks you might not even use, or that can come with restrictions. Apple Card gives you valuable benefits without annual fees. In fact, there's not a single fee at all. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone and start using it right away. Subject to credit approval, variable APRs for Apple Card range from 15.24% to 26.24% based on creditworthiness. Rates as of January 1st, 2023. Ozempic and Mounjaro might be the names you know. Those are brand names for these drugs. They are approved for use by diabetics. Wegovy is also approved to treat obesity. The way they work, in short, is by mimicking a hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. In diabetics, the drugs lower blood sugar levels, but they also do something else.
They work in the brain to tweak the hunger signals. So you, in fact, don't feel hungry anymore. You feel full, you feel sated, you feel disinterested. And for many people who have struggled with weight management, and in some cases with obesity, that is an extremely novel feeling. People describe feeling ravenous normally in a way that doesn't to them even feel normal. I don't say that to pathologize it. I say that in repeating things that have been told to me both by patients and their doctors, that people with real appetite control issues literally feel within their body, a drive to consume. And so in regulating this, that provides a lot of them a sense of relief and peace. And if you read, these Reddit forums for Ozempic and Mounjaro, you hear people, or I read, I guess you see people describing, tears of relief at having a few bites of something, feeling sated, and putting down the fork, the spoon, the chopsticks, whatever it is they're using.
In Matthew's story, he wrote about a medical conference when these drugs' precursors were introduced. And the doctors in the audience were stunned by how well they worked.
I think it is really a mark of the incredible enthusiasm they have for these drugs and more for the results. One doctor I spoke to, who's the chief scientific officer of the American Diabetes Association, was describing being at a scientific meeting when results were announced for one of the predecessor GLP-1 drugs. And, just said, there really were cheers, in terms of what these drugs could do, I think in that case for cardiovascular health. It really did feel like a game changer. Game changer is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, and you wonder how many times the game really does get changed. But from speaking to the medical community, this class of drugs, these GLP-1s, really were a significant step forward in the treatment of diabetes and associated conditions, including obesity and weight management.
When did they hit the market in a widespread way?
So it's a complicated question or complicated answer, I should say, because there were a number of GLP-1s. Ozempic was approved in 2017 and started being prescribed around then. And it was a success initially, but as it has sort of penetrated the market, as doctors and prescribers have become more aware of it, and now certainly as the wider public has become more aware of it, it has really exploded in a wild way. I spoke to a number of people working at medical analytics firms, and they said to me, when new drugs are brought to market or indications expanded, you do often see an uptick in prescriptions and usage. But, one doctor I spoke with said to me, I've never seen anything like this. And, the numbers are eye-opening. There were 1.2 million prescriptions filled for just the drug Ozempic this past December. That was up 64% from the December before. That's just one of these three drugs. The operating profits of Novo Nordisk, the company that produces it and produces Wegovy, the obesity version of it, these profits are up 58%, I believe, since 2017, when Ozempic was first introduced and brought to market. So, this is a very big moment for these drugs and, relatedly for the companies that produce them.
Maybe it seems obvious that a drug that makes you lose weight would be popular in an industry where being thin is not just an advantage, but often a requirement, and where off-label prescriptions can be easy to come by. It's hard to know exactly when Ozempic and its cousins took over Hollywood, but there's no question it happened.
As best I've been able to determine, that kind of happened slowly and then all at once. Part of the story of this drug is that it has become, really a name brand in the sense of kind of public recognition. There aren't that many name brand drugs that a person on the street happens to know. One doctor I spoke with said, not since Botox or Viagra has a drug like Ozempic come along that people instantaneously know and ask for by name. When you think about things like Botox and Viagra, I mean, those have essentially entered the vernacular, right? I think relatively early on in the process, doctors began to sort of understand it had this side effect and felt, generally speaking, it was kind of safe to prescribe off-label. Certainly one of the biggest media moments for Ozempic in particular happened last year. There was a whole kind of to-do around Kim Kardashian going to the Met Gala last May. She wore this vintage dress of Marilyn Monroe's.
I tried it on and it didn't fit me. And so I looked at them and I said, give me like 3 weeks. And I had to lose 16 pounds down today to be able to fit this.
And so she did not admit to taking Ozempic. In fact, she has specifically denied taking Ozempic. I want to be clear about that. But it very quickly became a sort of popular assumption and a rumor and kind of meme, essentially, that she had. And whether she did or not, the idea that there was this drug out there that could do this for you caught fire very quickly. And so Ozempic is really taken off on social media, TikTok in particular. There are hundreds of millions of impressions for the Ozempic hashtag.
Okay, so a lot of people are asking what I did to lose weight. I wish I could say it was from diet and exercise. It's not. It is from a shot called semaglutide. You've probably heard of it, like Wegovy or Ozempic. And I've been doing them for probably about 4 months, and I'm down like 25 pounds. I love it. It has helped me tremendously.
The scientific officer, Dr. Robert Gabbay from the American Diabetes Association, said to me, this is the first diabetes drug in the age of social media, or not the first drug, but the first one to kind of be viral in the age of social media. And so I think once that happens, it becomes a feedback loop. The more Hollywood it gets, the more it kind of blows up culturally coast to coast. The more it blows up culturally coast to coast, the more Hollywood people realize, it may be an option for them, and so on and so forth.
And while it might be hard to quantify, it's pretty easy to imagine the downstream effects of watching your favorite celebrity, or say Elon Musk, losing weight on these drugs and wanting to try it yourself.
I'm not sure there's any way to specifically quantify that effect because we also don't know. I think it's safe to presume that, some of these celebrities are getting it, prescribed to them. And so, their numbers are being adequately reflected in the prescriptions, and some are not. Some are getting it through other means. And, there's no real easy way to quantify that. I think, generally speaking, with growth numbers like these, you can see that there is an enormous amount of interest and both sort of like viral and intentional marketing behind this. And for the record, Novo Nordisk does market this drug specifically to consumers. It's careful to do so under the aegis of diabetes, but many people, I think, have the experience of seeing these television ads or streaming ads pop up. They have a little jingle.
People with type 2 diabetes are excited about the potential of once-weekly Ozempic. In a study with
the Magic song from the 70s, this classic rock song, not to put too fine a point on it, but this company would love for you to believe that Ozempic itself is magic, I think. I don't think that's a huge interpretive leap. So I think that too plays a part. It's the company is very clear. I spoke to their medical affairs officer. They cannot endorse, they do not suggest any off-label use, any pirated use. However, they know and acknowledge that this is happening, and there's a limited amount they can do about it, except kind of say from the sidelines, please only use this if your doctor prescribes it for the care of diabetes.
But the drugs aren't cheap. Insurance coverage for them can vary, and without insurance, the money adds up.
If you're getting it from your doctor, the list price is about $900. That is a month. Ozempic in particular is a weekly injection, a month's supply for injections. $900 is the list price. Now that's a little bit like, the sort of sticker price at a car dealership, depending on where you're getting it. There may be manufacturer coupons. There may be different deals with different pharmacies, direct mail order pharmacies, whatever the case may be. But generally speaking, for Ozempic in particular, you're looking around $900 to maybe $1,000. For the other medications, for Wegovy and Mounjaro, they tend to be even a little bit more than that, sort of in the $1,000 to kind of $1,300 a month range.
When we come back, what happens if you're a diabetic who needs these drugs but can't get them?
Everyone's talking about the rare health benefits of macadamias. Like, did you know they have more healthy fat than avocados? It's why they're so highly recommended by athletes, doctors, and diet experts. Get your fill at House of Macadamias. They have a high-quality range of delicious bars, purified oil, and nuts. So indulge in health. Any unsatisfactory orders are redeemable. And to get 20% off your purchase today, visit houseofmacadamias.com/podcast.
Hi, I'm Dahlia Lithwick, host of Slate's Amicus podcast, and I'm here to tell you that we have a special offer on Slate memberships. You can now get 3 months of Slate Plus for just $15, and you'll get no ads on any Slate podcasts, member-exclusive episodes and segments on my show Amicus, and shows like Political Gabfest and Slow Burn, and unlimited reading on the Slate site. And best of all, you would be supporting all of Slate's independent journalism as we cover everything that is happening in the news every day. Sign up for Slate Plus at slate.com/podcasts plus. Again, that's 3 months for only $15. So sign up now at slate.com/podcasts plus.
As the drugs become more popular for weight loss, there are lots of stories, and Matthew's heard them too, about diabetics who can't fill their prescriptions.
It's a real concern, and there is certainly compelling evidence, maybe anecdotal evidence, but there certainly a lot of suggestion that at least last year, people who needed it for diabetes were having a hard time getting it. Part of that was a supply chain issue. There were some issues, I believe, with the kind of production chain. Although officers from the company said very clearly, we expected this drug to do well. We did not expect it to do so well so clearly. Had we known that, we might have built the supply chain in a different way. And so I certainly spoke to patients who said to me, I was shunted from pharmacy to pharmacy looking for this medication. It was tough to get our hands on it. Doctors told me their patients were emailing them nearly constantly saying, I can't fill this prescription. What do I do? People were cutting doses in half to stretch them out. It's hard to know if that was a direct result of, specifically people taking it off-label, but I think, it's completely fair to say it was absolutely a follow-on effect, a knock-on effect of the incredible popularity, which was driven both by on and off-label use.
There's a statistic in Matthew's story that blew me away. 81% of prescriptions for these drugs are written for women. As a woman, I didn't know what to do with that. On the one hand, we're constantly bombarded with messages from society that we aren't thin enough. And it felt depressing that those numbers meant maybe we were giving in to that pressure. But on the other hand, a lot of people whose doctors have advised them to lose weight, have testified that these drugs finally help them do it after years of struggling. And now they feel freer and healthier and better about themselves.
I think one thing that's important to bear in mind is, as much as it is, a drug that people are using off-label for reasons that we might consider vain or less than medical or cosmetic, it's also a drug that is having a really significant effect on people's well-being, who feel they need it and who may have struggled, with these issues for years, if not their entire lives. The statistic about 81% of women, receiving these medications, startled me as well. I think generally speaking, women seek medical care more readily and more frequently than men do. So, some of that comes into play. I do think that while men also struggle with body image, we know that this is a problem that disproportionately affects women and girls. I mean, that's another part of this as well, is that, these medications, Wegovy has been approved for use in patients as young as 12. The American Pediatric Association revised its obesity treatment guidelines at the very beginning of this year to basically okay, if not outright encourage, the use of medications to deal with obesity. So that also is a kind of collision course between this kind of medical treatment and medicalized treatment and, the messages we were bombarding girls and young girls with, on social media and the general media and culture, full stop.
But, and this is important, a lot of doctors are really excited about the potential of these drugs to treat obesity. something which affects roughly 42% of Americans, according to the CDC. And obesity can come with all kinds of downstream health effects, like high blood pressure and heart disease. I wondered if the doctors Matthew spoke to were frustrated by the Hollywood weight loss drama surrounding these drugs.
Well, it's a real minefield, right? I mean, it is, and I want to be very careful. And I also, I want to continue to underscore, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Speaking to doctors, and especially endocrinologists and those with a subspecialty in obesity, because there are, in fact, board certifications in obesity medicine, they will tell you there are associated health risks to obesity and even being overweight. That is not to say that anyone who's overweight or obese is by definition unhealthy. And it's certainly not to say that anybody who is within a normal weight category or underweight is themselves healthy. Health is a matrix, and there are a million factors that inform all of these things. That said, my understanding is that in broad strokes, the potential for medical problems associated with obesity, cardiovascular problems, diabetes problems, things like this, are real. And so, if you ask a doctor, would you prefer me to be obese or non-obese, all things being equal, I generally think most doctors are going to say, if you could be a non-obese, that would be, on the whole, healthier for you. So yes, I think the reason that doctors are prescribing these medications, especially to diabetic patients, is not specifically for the weight loss, but that is a non-incidental side effect. If diabetics need to manage their blood sugar, managing blood sugar is easier when weight is under control.
One important wrinkle is that these drugs haven't really been on the market long enough and tested enough in a non-diabetic population to know all of their side effects.
Generally speaking, these drugs are well tolerated. That is generally speaking. Almost every patient I spoke with had some side effects, ranging from mild to significant. They generally lessen as your body adjusts and you take some time to move up in dosage, but they can include, the most common ones include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation. Some people also mention fatigue. Some people also mention headaches. But almost everyone I spoke to in the patient community said that they're well worth, some nausea, some vomiting, some diarrhea, whatever the case may be. There was one patient I spoke with, a woman that we call April in the story, who said that her headaches and nausea were so bad that she was hoping to go off. She was on Ozempic, and she was hoping to go off, and she was prescribed it on label for her diabetes. It did bring her A1C down. Her doctor was very pleased with that result. She found that her headaches were so bad that she was interested in going off it. But, and this is the but, and I said, what about this weight loss that you've had and enjoyed, which was not your aim, which was not the purpose? And she said, it does give me pause. I like the way I look now better. She had come to New York for this party. She was wearing a dress she hadn't fit into in some time. Everybody was noticing. Everybody was oohing and eyeing. She put a picture of herself on Facebook. People can't believe it. That is seductive and it is tempting to people. And, I think it's every patient and every doctor's in consultation, decision whether the side effects are worth the benefits.
One woman Matthew spoke to was hilariously deadpan about just how seductive the weight loss was for her and how much she might be willing to tolerate.
This woman was, was she joking? Was she not joking? This was one of the funnier people I spoke to. So I do think she was riffing a little bit. But, these drugs are relatively new. The FDA has approved them as being safe under specific circumstances and for treatment of specific drugs. That said, they do mandate warnings that patients with a certain history of thyroid issues, a certain kind of thyroid cancer, pancreatitis, should not be taking them because in lab rodents, these drugs were linked to the development of a certain kind of thyroid tumor. We don't know whether, the same should be expected in humans, but it is a possibility. That's one reason why, taking them outside of a doctor's care really can be dangerous. If you are getting them from a prescriber that asks you no questions about your medical history, you don't volunteer, that may not be trained to, deal with such things, it's not impossible that someone with a kind of dangerous precondition could be taking a drug that really they ought not to be taking. But this woman sort of said to me, well, if this drug was going to give me breast cancer, of course I wouldn't take it. If it was going to give me lung cancer, I wouldn't take it. But, thyroid cancer feels like a manageable cancer, question mark. I do not endorse that view. I am not an oncologist either, but to me, it was an absolutely incredible moment of candor from someone that really gives you a picture into how tense these issues around weight and body and self-esteem are for people, that they are willing to roll the dice on at least the possibility of very serious medical issues if it will, be a panacea for this other issue that they've dealt with, potentially for a long time, being their weight.
One other thing that comes through in Matthew's story is the secrecy and even shame around taking these drugs. The implication being, sure, everyone might be on them, but hey, not me. It's almost like an injection rather than some grueling regimen of workouts and calorie restriction is somehow cheating.
I would speak to patients who were on it and they would say, well, everybody's doing this and it's all over the place and, there's nothing wrong with it. And I would say, well, great. Can we use your name in the story? And they would say, oh, no. Absolutely not. I couldn't possibly talk to you. I couldn't possibly reveal this. And I think it's twofold. One, I think, there is the ethical murkiness around some of these people taking this medication in an off-label way, even in a kind of off-market way, gray market way. No one wants to brag that they're taking a medically necessary drug out of the hands of people who need it for medicine, right? I quoted Aubrey Gordon, who's a kind of fat positive writer and activist in the piece, saying, it really is reprehensible to take a drug that someone needs medically and use it, for swimsuit season. So, not everyone feels that way, and that's a personal calculus. I don't take a strong position on that myself, but certainly I think that feeling is out there. And then secondly, I think we culturally have a very complicated relationship with diet and exercise and kind of the quote unquote right and wrong ways to lose weight or manage body weight. Is Ozempic a kind of cheat? I was speaking to Linda Wells, who's a longtime observer and writer in the beauty industry. She was the founding editor of Allure, and she was saying, diet discussions have become extremely fraught. Weight Watchers is now WW. We don't talk about weight. We talk about wellness. That said, there still seems to be the long hangover of this idea that, the kind of correct diet to do is one that is effortful and painful. And, that there's a sort of moral benefit or something to losing weight by whatever it is, sweating to the oldies or, running marathons or whatever it is. I think some people either feel or fear that others will feel that losing weight via an injectable drug feels like a kind of unnecessary, unfair shortcut.
It's hard to look at the shame around these drugs and their simultaneous popularity and not wonder if our quote-unquote wellness era was bullshit.
These last few years were supposed to be our era of body positivity and size inclusivity and, ad campaigns featuring men and women of all sizes and shapes. And, we celebrate that and that's beautiful. And to be clear, that is beautiful. But what you sort of find as soon as a silver bullet appears and people race to take it is that it seems that even those people who are the first to proclaim that it's beautiful would rather it be beautiful for other people. Does that give the lie to the whole thing? I'm not sure, but it certainly kind of shakes the foundations of that whole edifice.
There's also something, and I wonder what you think about this, that feels very, I don't know if it's just American or individualistic about these drugs as like a kind of weight loss solution writ large, right? Like they're not addressing an inequitable food system. It's not helping people get preventative care earlier in their lives. It's an injection. It's an injection you can buy. I'm not sure what to do with that. I'm not sure where it fits into that puzzle.
I think the benefit of these drugs is that for a really epidemic problem in America and a problem around the world. But, diabetes in America affects tens of millions of people. The CDC numbers suggest that I think it's 37 million adult Americans have diabetes, and another 96 million are pre-diabetic. This is a major issue, and also, not unrelatedly for these drug companies, a major market and a major opportunity. And so while it's very easy and maybe to some extent correct to worry that this is a patch on a necessary larger solution, I think it's also possible to look at these drugs and see that for the people who need them, they're providing a good and necessary service. And, when used appropriately and within a doctor's care, they shouldn't be stigmatized, and they shouldn't be a source of shame or anything else.
Matthew Schneier, thank you so much for your reporting and for talking with me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Matthew Schneier is a features writer at New York Magazine. And that is it for our show today. What Next TBD is produced by Evan Campbell. Our show is edited by Shannon Pallas. Alicia Montgomery is Vice President of Audio for Slate. TBD is part of the larger What Next family, and we're also part of Future Tense, a partnership of Slate, Arizona State University, and New America. And if you're a fan of the show and like what you hear, I have a request for you. Join Slate Plus. It's the best way to support us. Just head on over to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up. All right, we'll be back next week with more episodes. I'm Lizzie O'Leary. Thanks for listening.